This is the Fitness Fest podcast detailing the story of fitness professionals from around the world. Let's get to the episode. Hello and welcome to the Fitness Fest podcast. My name is Tyler Valencia and I'm the president of KIPS and Kettlebell Concepts. Indoor cycling, one of the mainstays of group exercise today, yesterday, months past, and going to be in the future. Today on the podcast, we have Andrea Austin, the owner of BeatBoss. Today, she's going to talk about BeatBoss, talk about how she built this brand up, and really the unique features of it. Andrea, to get this podcast rolling, in your own words, how do you describe BeatBoss compared to the other formats available?
Hi, Tyler. Thank you so much for having me as your guest. It truly is an honor. And just, opening up your platform to not only myself, but so many fitness professionals that have different methods that they have to share, different vantage points. So I just really, really appreciate that so very much. So interestingly, so in my own words, describing BeatBoss in compared to other cycling formats, there's really sort of four primary areas to that. Okay, when you think of indoor cycling traditionally is focused on road biking. And with road biking, there's obviously a focus of watts, okay, and that's the power output. And with BeatBoss, we are absolutely focusing on watts and endurance as an athlete, but also bringing it to the masses. But interestingly, we're also inspired by off-road biking. Now, that is very unique to the indoor cycling arena. Okay. And that means that we bring a focus and inspiration from mountain biking and BMX biking for greater cross-training purposes. Okay, now that's a very interesting thought process right now, with the focus of road only traditionally. But we bring that extra dimension by being inspired by those mountain bikers, those BMXers. All right. So, Tyler, I'm going to ask you a question. When you think of a mountain biker or a BMXer, in comparison to a road biker, what do you think the differences are? Just in your own mind, just kind of think about that.
So it's, I might have an unfair advantage on today's recording just because I have spoken with Robert, the senior director for BeatBoss, but in my mind, it'd be that upper body and driving the bike and being able to utilize that compared to, road bikes. And I have a road bike myself, and I know that I just kind of rest my upper body on the handles while I'm pedaling. But in years past, when I did have a mountain bike, just driving that upper body with the bike or going uphill, through the terrain and whatnot, that upper body plays such an important piece to the puzzle.
That's exactly it in a very simplistic way. So in other words, we're drawing on multi-planes, okay? So rather than typically one plane of motion, if you will, we are drawing on all three planes of motion with BeatBoss. And keep in mind that the indoor cycle bike is a simulated bike. It is not an actual outdoor bike. So that's why we use the word inspiration. So that bike inside it has a fixed base. When you think about it, Tyler, right? The bikes that are in gyms or studios or at homes or, perhaps while traveling in hotel gyms, they are fixed, right? The base of them are fixed. And so you are going to approach them differently, all right? So you have a very safe base there. And then when you're inspired by road, of course, you are using RPM, watts, and drills. But then you are bringing in upper body movement patterns that simulate those BMXers laterally, rotationally. And that way, the fascia is engaged, okay? And that's another topic that I could get into. But fascia is connective tissue. It's kept healthy by safe bouncing, by moving in space and different planes of motion. And on a fixed base simulated bike, it's very safe as long, and here's the key, as long as the movement patterns are tested, all right, on a variety of different people, different ages, different abilities, and that it is safe for all of them.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. So another interesting aspect is that we are considered cross training. Okay. We're not sport specific training necessarily. So, Tyler, have you been an athlete in your past in a specific sport?
I could say that I'm a competitive athlete actually right now in the Scottish Highland Games.
Oh, wow. Okay. So, question for you, how do you train for that? You train sport specifically, right? For the exact things that you do for that sport. So, with BeatBoss, we actually are cross training.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we take those elements using the different planes of motion, being inspired by 3 different biking styles, and we move in those different planes of motion. And so that creates that cross training element to strengthen all different populations, whether you're an athlete, all right, or whether you're just general population of all different ages,
Mm-hmm.
from teenagers all the way up to our seniors. BeatBoss can speak to them.
I like it.
So, another interesting thing that I'd love to chat about is BeatBoss uniquely bridges a gap. Okay. And really, up until BeatBoss, there was a very big gap between indoor road focused cycling and rhythm riding.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And both of them really were sort of and still are, quite honestly, are at odds with each other. They see each other as sometimes wrong in their focus. And what BeatBoss does is really marries the two together uniquely. So we are data driven, we're RPM driven, we're watts driven, all right, we're drills driven. But then we also have the options to add in those inspirations of upper body add ons
Mm-hmm.
in the multiplanar moves. And so we marry the two. And so at this point, people can get educated in the methodology. They can bring it to their clubs, their studios, and really it helps them to stand out even more. Okay, because they have that education now, their why, their purpose, why they're doing things on the bike. They can coach their class members better. They can explain to their class members better. And who doesn't like to learn?
Mm-hmm.
Everyone likes to learn the why behind why we're doing something, especially when it comes to fitness.
Agreed. The piece that I really like from there is the educational component. And it's a good segue in terms
Mm-hmm.
of the fitness industry, but also the way in terms trainers can approach education. In my own opinion,
Mm-hmm.
some of the companies that are excelling right now take a similar approach with looking at the modality and in using it in all planes of movement. One that I can speak from in terms of one that I incorporate in my own training, trying to connect all the pieces here. The Viper Pro is something that I
Mm-hmm.
was turned on to about 2 years ago. And I compete in a sport that is, I don't want to say there's a lot of old thinking in it, but a lot of do heavy squats, do heavy deadlifts, do
Mm-hmm.
maybe power cleans. Some people believe in doing power cleans, but I do a variety of the traditional lifts. So I do power lifts, I do Olympic lifts, but I do also incorporate a lot of 3D movements, as I'll call them, where you're moving
Mm-hmm.
through all the planes of motion. And really, the piece that I think is going to tie this together is how you are protecting the spine, how you are building core strength, core stability, which
Yes.
people do not. I know that what is a term that some people do not like to hear, or they think it's a bad term, but building the strength through the spine in order to generate power and those types of pieces. So how
Mm-hmm.
and different formats, modalities incorporate that piece. And so that's what I immediately popped into my head when you started talking about incorporating these in a indoor cycling format, which I think is great to hear. It's something that separates Beat Boss, but really
Yes.
pushes the boundaries of what you can do to benefit ultimately the client in that class.
Absolutely.
So with that,
Absolutely.
yeah,
Yep.
yeah,
Yeah, I just would like to add to that
go ahead,
one
yeah.
one quick thing, and it goes back to, I mentioned the fixed base bike. So when you think about something fixed, and then you put on top of that something fixed as well, the body tightens more.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And although there is, obviously cardiovascular benefit, there is power benefit and
Mm-hmm.
endurance benefit, you're limiting the benefits
Yeah.
by fixing and fixing, because the body then remains tight, especially when you're obviously flexed over, at the hip joints. When you're on an indoor cycle bike, you're not straight up and down, you're flexed over. So then that's creating too much opening in the back, all right, and too much tightening in the core
Mm-hmm.
in a one plane motion. So you've got tight on tight, and although there are some benefits, but what happens is a lot of people that do too much of that, they are set up for even more chronic injury over time. Okay, and BeatBoss is a solution to that. And the key, though, is that it is science-based and very safe. It's tested. And it doesn't mean you just, do the wild, wild west on the bike, okay? we often use that term, that we see a lot of wild, wild west out there. But we want to harness that creative side of BeatBoss, and yet make it safe and effective and grounded in science and tradition.
Mm-hmm. I like it. I like it. What really popped in my mind there is many times when somebody sees some of the stuff I do for the Highland Games, they immediately
Mm-hmm.
think, "Oh, you're going to break your back," or they think that they don't know how I can do some of it with specifically the Scottish hammer. It's basically a 16. There's a 16-pound version and there's a 22-pound version. I swing it around my head and I throw it behind me, but there's a
Yeah.
lot of core stability that's required in it. And in my
Yes.
opinion, using these multi-planar movements is what has helped me to excel in that one event. So it's a great way to approach all modalities, is how can you
Yes.
incorporate more into it, just how you're saying, to add benefit to it, which is great.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. It kind of modernizes it,
yeah,
really.
I agree. I agree.
It takes something that is, had a phenomenal start, and it still remains. But you know what? I've learned myself as a veteran trainer that if I don't freshen it, I'm gonna become a dinosaur.
Yep.
And quite honestly, there are some elements to indoor cycling that have reached that. A little bit dusty, a little bit. Just needs some updating. And again, we saw an opportunity to fill that void, and we feel that BeatBoss does that.
Yeah, I like it. I like it. And now the approach from a business owner. I'm a business owner
Mm-hmm.
myself. I'll say I like to innovate myself. I
Mm-hmm.
do like to push the boundaries, try new stuff in order to see what the outcome is and see what ways you can approach something that's maybe old. So with
Mm-hmm.
that, and we've been in conversation for a handful of months now, and I think
Yeah.
that what has really stuck out of my mind, which is great, is the way that you guys approach you guys' education and the standards that you set. What would you say are the standards in your mind that it comes to education
Mm-hmm.
when you're educating trainers? What are those things that you really feel are valuable?
Yeah, and I approach this really similarly, not only as a personal trainer with a personal training business, but then also BeatBoss. Okay, as a veteran personal trainer, certified through NASM, I always maintain that foundational certification. I never let it lapse.
Mm-hmm.
I keep it up. I think that's number one. You never want to let that go, thinking, well, I don't really need it anymore. The investment isn't worth it anymore. It is expensive. I mean, we all know that education does take, it does take some coins. It definitely does. But really, any profession, any professional individual, whether they're a doctor or a lawyer or a nurse or a physical therapist or, someone in the fitness industry or really any kind of trade, they have to stay fresh by keeping their education up. when you think, when you've arrived at a place where you think, I don't really need any more education, I don't need to keep that up, I think that that's a red flag. I think it's something that speaks to perhaps where you've arrived at, that you've stagnated. And so it's really important that you honor your foundational certifications, you invest in them. And that, of course, speaks to continuing education. And it's always important to select a variety of topics. And what I like to practice is getting outside of my comfort zone. Okay. So when I pick continuing education topics, I think, what's an area that could maybe stretch me? What's an area that I might get a little uncomfortable with and I feel new again? Because then I'm going to understand more how not only my clients as a personal trainer, but also how our new instructors are feeling when they come in and they get certified. I know exactly how they feel as newbies. I can relate to them. I can express that to them and share stories with them so they feel more comfortable. So with BeatBoss, we've actually really proudly switched from, originally we were a workshop. We were a certification, but more of a workshop, sort of a one and done, okay? And what we were seeing is we were seeing our instructors really needy after that, Tyler. They would go through our workshop, and then we offered them coaching. However, most of them didn't take that up because it wasn't required, all right? It did require some investment on their part. And they felt, well, I don't really need that. I can just figure it out on my own. And so most of them would just go out on their own and, they would just start making up their own things. And we saw, kind of back to that wild, wild west happening within our company with our instructors. It really saddened us. We were sad seeing that this is an area that was a huge area missing in our training process. So we took a year and redeveloped BeatBoss, and proudly now we are a full spectrum certification. We're truly educators in the industry now, game-changing educators. So we have our initial training. We also have our instructors enter into our continuing education portal. Okay, and so they continue to learn from us every month. They receive progressing class layouts, suggested playlists, demonstration videos. And so it's like a dynamic way to keep up their education. All right. And then along with that, we do still provide instructor coaching and being a part of a wonderful, positive community. And so their education continues after they've gotten officially certified. And so I think that that's very, very key. All right. So making sure that understanding that indoor cycling is just as valuable as far as being educated as being a yoga instructor. There's 200-hour yoga trainings. I myself am 200-hour yoga trained. I also have invested in Stott Pilates, and these are a lot of time, and a lot of effort, and they are an investment. And we've seen that indoor cycling is a little bit behind in that. So a lot of people think, well, I can just watch some YouTube videos or get a quick cert online and I'm good. That's enough. And then I can make up my own things. But really, you're working on a piece of equipment that could potentially be high risk. If you're not setting your clients or your class members up properly, if you're not giving them the why, the purpose and reason for everything you do on the bike, whether it's super fun or it's an element of learning, okay, it's really important that you have that education behind you. Does that make sense?
Oh yeah. And I like the steps that you took with it in order to assess it and see what the situation was, and really to push forward. You took steps that were hands-on approach to it. 'Cause sometimes I think we see in the fitness industry, and this is my own opinion on this, that some education companies will develop something and okay, that's it. We created it. We're done. But that constant reassessment of what you have, and that's honestly the approach that I have with all the courses that are made available through KIPS, is it's a constant reassessment. And I tell this with the instructors that I do eventually work with on courses is that, okay, we will launch a course, but after that,
Mhm.
we're still going. We'll go through, we can improve it. And that's the value of, if it's an online course, that's the value of an online course, is that we can constantly improve it, adapt, but also improve upon current research if needed.
Yes.
So that approach is something
Yes.
that I think, if we look at even exercise instruction, it's simply
Mhm.
how we train somebody. We are constantly reassessing them. So why can't we take that approach with education and developing education?
Absolutely. And then you take that element and place it on a relatively new methodology that BeatBoss is, a new concept of blending,
Hmm.
the traditional indoor cycling with safe and effective science-based upper body add-ons. It's so important to be educated in that.
Hmm.
Okay, because otherwise you're just sort of left to your own devices. I know for myself, if I'm left to my own device, I am a creative, all right? I do love science, but I come from a creative past, and I can often say, "Well, let me put my own spin on this. Let's see what this is about and make up my own things." Okay?
Hmm.
But, being a brand owner now, I can see the value of, although allowing that creativity, and we do allow that, it also has a little bit of a girded foundation and a harness, so that our instructors, they feel so supported and sure about what they're presenting to class members and clients.
Hmm. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. And that approach too, it makes sure that the brand that you're building is the vision that you have, but also that it's founded in pushing forward. If you're just stagnant,
Mhm.
like we've been talking about, that you come to a point where you're like, well, how did I end up here? It's probably because you didn't constantly reassess or look in how I can improve my team. How can I
Yes.
improve their education? I'm a big fan of education. I'm currently still working on a graduate degree. And so with that, that's been a years of
Yeah.
educational work with it. And I think that education and that belief in education is what has pushed me towards where I am now, just looking for ways to improve, whether it's with exercise science, whether it's with technology, those
Mhm.
types of pieces. It's education. It's really an education.
It really is. And another thing that I'd love to just mention
Mhm.
is, as a long-term fitness veteran, it's so important to lead with humility, and that goes to always being open to learning. Learning from in education, but also learning, with your team, and being humble with them, listening to them, allowing them space to share and give their input and their expertise, and almost like a roundtable approach. And it's so important to always sort of lead with that, and never think, "Oh, I've arrived. I'm good. I've been in this for 20 years. I'm an authority." Really always trying to set that aside every day, and not be ego driven. It's tempting to be that way at times, when you look at your experience and things that you're able to offer, but it's so important to lead with that, with humility. And, again, that Beat Boss, we really try to bring in that round table approach, that team effort. So
I
I think
like
it's
it.
always good to approach education like that too. What can
Yeah.
I learn from this person? What do they have to offer me today?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And it's such a
Mhm.
great outlook for the fitness industry. And I know many fit pros that are listening in, or hopefully
Mhm.
will hear this part. And the humility factor is something that we don't see enough of in the fitness
Yes.
industry. And I honestly believe that the best trainers are ones that are constantly looking for educations and ways to go outside of what they are, or what their wheelhouse is and what they're used to, learning those new formats. And that was really a piece of information that was given to me when I first started in the industry,
Yeah.
was to learn things that you're not used to. And I'm not just talking specifically about fitness. I remember the tip that I was given was by the head
Mhm.
trainer at the gym that I worked at. And she recommended I start honestly reading, and this is kind of funny, but women's magazines. She's like, if you want to
Ah,
make an
yeah.
industry, your clients will most likely be women. You should learn what they're reading about, topics they're interested in.
Yeah.
Not all of them are going to be in. I don't think you said it this way, but not. But when you think about it, not all women are interested in sports. I like sports, but
Right.
they might not be. So you got to learn
Right.
things that are interesting to them. But that
Yeah.
applied in many
That's
ways.
Boy, that's so interesting you say that, because I go back to, the different education, the continuing education that I've done over the years, for my personal training business. And interestingly, that does feed BeatBoss and the concepts of BeatBoss, Tyler. They really do feed each other. But I think about some of the continuing education that I've done. I've done trauma informed training or trauma informed yoga or fascia. I
Hmm.
mean, I'm Zumba licensed, and it's or rehab or even massage workshops, and how to integrate some of these concepts into your, being a three-dimensional trainer. And I think that that's exactly what you're saying. You almost put yourself in the shoes of those that you're servicing,
Yes.
rather than having clients or class members. You come to me, we need to come to them.
Hmm.
We need to come to them. We're there to serve them. And
Oh
I
yeah.
think that that is a very unique foundational focus of BeatBoss, and the staff that I engage and I bring on. They are all tremendous team players. They are all really patient people, and they're kind, obviously, but they also lead with that humility, and really wanting to make the client, the class member, the new instructor, the veteran instructor going through training first. How can we help them? How can we communicate better with them? And I think that again goes back to this fitness industry. I think needs more of that. I think it does need a little bit of a check on that at times. So we're trying to lead by example in that area for sure.
I will add to that I think a piece of that, and this is what popped in my head, was the experience. That the
Mm-hmm.
experience from the other person, the customer or the client, what is that experience that you want to create for them? So the first
Yes.
piece that I'll share, and this is something that some people might not agree with, but when I train people, I would say there's almost a different, I don't want to say it's a persona, but I have things that I will not do when I train clients. I won't swear. I will
Mm-hmm.
not talk about certain topics. I'll say controversial topics.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that is also part of the experience for them. And people will say that about me, that when I train them, whether it was a group class or personal training, that it's
Mm-hmm.
very professional in it. And that's the persona that I wanted to portray for them. Do I act the same way in my personal life or when I'm at home relaxing? Of course not. But that goes into the experience for the client. If you are trying to get individuals that are going to be investing potentially thousands of dollars in you and your
Yeah.
training, what is
Yes.
that experience that you want for them? And I think that is, I've been very thankful and fortunate to have trained some high level corporate CEOs, but
Mm-hmm.
the experience that I gave them was always professional. And I think that is what really stuck in their head. And in bringing this to BeatBoss, the experience that you guys provide for
Mm-hmm.
clients, for trainers that are now, teaching them the format, the experience that you're providing, it all is rooted in education because those standards
Yes.
that you've set. Um, the question that I have for you now
Mm-hmm.
with BeatBoss, when did you believe that you had a unique certification? Like, what was that thought process that you had that was going through your head?
Wow, I love that question. I mean, really, it's been quite a journey, and it's a dynamic one. I don't think that it's necessarily, well, this is the point that, I knew that we had something exact, okay? Because it's been such a journey of evolution, starting out in roots of, being more of a workshop. But to answer your question, I really think it goes back to watching our new instructors going through the training and seeing light bulbs go on in them, seeing excitement in them. more certainty versus confusion. All right, is how I knew that our process was improved. Does that make sense? So they weren't wondering, well, what's next? What do I do? What's now? What is this okay? So our process has gotten much stronger and certain. And that's how I knew for sure at this point and now in this day and age that we
Mhm.
have a very solid process in place that they can rest assured on. Now, as far as the methodology goes, I knew that we had something special fairly soon, because it's so unique. There really is nothing else out there like it. There are certainly trainings, for riding the beat. There's rhythm riding out there. There's studios that train in rhythm. There's, obviously our traditional indoor cycling out there and certifications. And I knew we had something special when we were combining the two, and we gave it purpose. We gave it reason. Rather than leading with what do you do, we lead with why.
Mhm.
Why do you do what you do? Okay, because that speaks and answers and fills that gap. Okay, and interestingly, kind of going back to the learning process, I spent a lot of time learning from road athletes. Am I a road athlete? Absolutely not. I come from a creative background, a dance background, a fitness background. So I knew that this was an area that I needed to learn and I need to become the student in. So, studying the cycling athletes, how do they think? How do they approach cycling and why do they think like that? So taking time to listen, to learn, and then taking those concepts and applying them uniquely to BeatBoss. So we're not replicating exactly because we want to be unique, but then also honoring that creative side, knowing that we love music, we love movement. How do we combine them into a branded methodology? And when that came about, I knew that we had something special, really special. And then making it into an actual certification in the last year, we are absolutely standing out because of that.
Oh, well, yeah. I'm going to go back to what you said with the why, because that is
Mhm.
such an important piece that
Yeah.
I know that separates you guys with in terms of the research, the science that spreads across personal training, group exercise in general. The why. Why
Mhm.
are you doing certain exercises? Why are you
Yes.
programming certain exercises? Those types of questions for instructors, if you're asking yourself that, I think you find a much better answer instead of,
Yes.
oh, because somebody else taught me this, or, oh, like I like doing this. The why
Mhm.
is really the important piece of it. And it ultimately leads to better experiences, better outcomes for the client. I always say this: the ultimate end goal, or the person that is benefiting most from more education, is the client. That is the person
Yeah.
that is that you're ultimately trying to improve upon. You're trying to improve upon their health. So you're getting more education, and finding out the why is such an
Yeah.
important piece.
It really is. And I think on top of that, I do want to bring in sort of the balancer out to education, and that is connecting.
Mm-hmm.
It's connecting. So there are a lot of people that have amazing educations. They have an educational past, and they have a lot of higher education, and it's impressive. I've always been impressed with individuals that go really far in formal education. But I'd also like to speak to how important it is to be able to connect with people emotionally and at the heart.
Mm-hmm.
And without that, you really only have education, and it's not going to go very far because we're dealing with humans, aren't we? We're dealing with people that have challenges in their life, in their past, their present, and in their future. The clients and our instructors, we make sure that we're connecting with them at our hearts. and we make sure that we're listening to them and maybe stopping and listening to their day. And so putting the two together is so key. And with BeatBoss, we absolutely lead with that. We lead with the combination, because one without the other, it's really a weaker brand.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And it's a weaker approach. So if it's all heart and no education, if it's just fun, in other words, and there's no why, purpose, that's a weaker brand. But then if it's very education focused, it's got an amazing foundational science view, it's got unique methodology to it, but then there's not a heart to it, there's not a fun factor to it, there's not creativity in it, it's a weaker brand. And
Yeah.
so it's important to us that we're really leading with both.
Yeah. Yeah. You're one of a handful of people that have mentioned something similar to me, through a podcast about
Mm-hmm.
that the community, the and building that community around your education, it really takes it to the next level. And one of the individuals that said that this is something that they've researched and looked into, and really believes that that has helped or will help them in the future with growing their brand. That they were very early on in the development of their business, but at the same time, somebody else that I've interviewed on this podcast has really talked about the community and the process that goes into building that community, which they believe in. From what I can say with talking with different individuals, many people believe that too. The community is such an
Mm-hmm.
important factor for it, which is great to hear. Very great to hear. With the next piece that I think would be interesting to briefly touch on is, if you were entering the industry now, what was
Mm-hmm.
something that you wish you knew? I think that I will admit that I was very surprised when I heard how long you've been in the industry, and that I've
Yeah.
complimented you on. But what is something that you wish you knew?
Wow. I have to kind of think about that one a little bit. What I wish you mean going back and asking myself what I would wish I would known. I think, thinking about it sort of in a nutshell, I think it speaks to a couple areas. I think aligning with like-minded people.
I like that.
Okay. I think that's a really huge one.
Mm-hmm.
Finding really sort of your tribe, if you will. It's such a cliche statement right now,
Mm-hmm.
but it really is true. Finding people that, not only are you like-minded when you meet them, but also tried and true. You spend time, you use patience in getting to know them. You observe them in different challenges and positive times, challenging times. Do you relate to each other in a similar way? It doesn't mean you're exactly the same. In fact, that's not always great either. We like
Mm-hmm.
to have, uniqueness to us, of course. But what it comes down to is that you share the same sort of outlook. All right, especially when it comes to business, when it comes to dealing with individuals,
Mm-hmm.
dealing with groups, um, your outlook on short-term goals, long-term goals. Patience is a big one. Being able to be patient in this industry is so important.
Mm-hmm.
Not rushing ahead too fast. These are all things that I've learned over time. And then selecting a team that feels the same way, sees the value of looking at a business from those vantage points. And then being malleable, being able to flex and bend when things are uncertain. Being okay in those kind of places is really, really key. So I think that I don't know if it's so much I wish I would have known that, but more so that I've always had that in me, but growing into really, really surrounding myself with people like that.
That's
I, w-
great.
I would say that, yeah, those are some really big, important points.
Oh yeah, very big. I think it's almost a human nature that we want things immediate. And
Yes.
I've heard comedians talk about that we're so used to in this day. in society that we want things now. I mean, we got
Yeah.
Amazon Prime that you can get stuff delivered today, not tomorrow, not 2 days from now,
Right.
today. And it's crazy whenever that does happen. You order something in the
Yeah,
morning,
it
and all of a
is.
sudden, three hours later, it's at your doorstep. How did that happen?
How
But
did that happen? I know.
we want things today, but having
Yeah.
patience in business
Oh
when
my gosh.
I'm going to throw
Yeah.
in there the little piece about when it's appropriate, because I think there are things that you have to make decisions on a little bit quicker sometimes, but
Oh yeah.
patience does help a lot, especially with relationships, with
Yep.
building relationships with individuals, getting to know them. All the things that you just mentioned are so key, so
Mhm.
that ultimately you either keep that relationship for longer, or the foundation of it is built in trust, and that you both understand each other in order to grow together, which I think is such an interesting piece to think about, and really to hold true to yourself with business, because we've seen it happen many times in the fitness industry. And so
Yeah.
it's a great piece to touch on. So Andrea, as we start to wrap up the
Mhm.
podcast, can you dive into a little bit about upcoming certifications online, or if
Oh.
there's any potential for live, or also any conferences that you guys are going to be a part of? Wink, wink.
I would love to chat about that. Well, obviously, we have the Fitness Fest coming up, and in September, we're proudly a part of that. We are presenters, and we are so, grateful to Janice, the owner of Fitness Fest.
Mm-hmm.
She has been willing to invite us and add spice to Fitness Fest in the area of indoor cycling. And, I really am so grateful for her. She is such a wonderful, genuine business owner, and we're super excited to be a part of that. As far as upcoming certifications, we have 2 online certifications, and these are online live BeatBoss certifications, August 15th and 16th. Wow, that is in a week. Oh my gosh, it's still not too late to register. People can register for that. And the next one is November 7th and 8th. And again, these are online opportunities. Our online education is phenomenal. In fact, I used to be a little bit of a critic of online training, and I thought, we need to make ours really interactive, and ours is definitely interactive and super positive, fun, and educational. Also, I would love to share about our on-demand and live streaming masterclass subscription service.
Please do.
This is open to the public. It's open to anyone that has access to an indoor cycle bike, whether they're at their home, whether they are a part of a gym and they have cycle bikes out on the floor, or they have access to cycle rooms. This is a service that is open to the public, and I would love to invite anyone interested in trying this for free, a trial week to it. All they have to do is message me on either Facebook or on our website. And so it really is our on-demand and live streaming platform. It's all BeatBoss master classes ranging from level 1 to level 4. Very little upper body add-on, road-based focused, up to a lot of upper body add-ons, 30 all the way up to 75-minute classes. And our master instructors, they're wonderful. So with that,
Awesome.
I'd love to invite people to try it. Yes.
Awesome. Awesome. Now, what about the social media profiles and
Oh,
accounts?
yeah. So Instagram, BeatBoss Biking. Okay. Facebook is BeatBoss. And then our website is beatboss.rocks. Also, they can find me personally on Facebook, Andrea R. Austin. They can friend me on Facebook. They can send me a message, and also, they certainly can get to know my team. Our team basically is an open book. We like to call it BeatBoss 24/7. We pride ourselves in answering people's questions very quickly, engaging them quickly, and onboarding them quickly. So, with that, I definitely invite people to connect with me and BeatBoss.
Great stuff. Really great stuff. In this episode, I think we touched on so many important pieces for the industry, for into recycling, or even just developing a brand. Andrea, thank you
Yeah.
so much for being my guest on the Fitness Fest podcast. And we'll definitely have to figure out more stuff to talk.
Thank you, Tyler, so much. I really, really appreciate you, and I appreciate the time.